don't do that.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hey, Bob. How you doing?
Absolutely awesome. How are you doing?
Doing great. Glad to be here.
You've been on one hell of a journey, haven't you?
It's been quite a season for sure. I'll be glad to see New Year's of 2021 come around.
There you go.
Yeah, it's been something. How's things been with you?
It's been an interesting time, but I have always enjoyed playing outside the box.
Yeah.
So when there is no box, it's really a lot of fun.
Right. You can just do whatever. Yeah.
You got it. So, but
Everybody's expectations are gone, so you can do whatever and it's cool.
well, and as long as you keep an eye that the path might be rocky, but it will be straightened,
Mhm.
then you know that you can keep moving forward. So we're
Right.
doing some exciting things. I'm going to be making an announcement today as to a new venture for Prime Plus.
Oh, cool. I was going to ask if you had any favorite new things coming up. So
Well,
good.
yep,
Yeah,
we
I can't wait
got
to hear about it.
the next week to 10 days, we're going virtual.
Oh, nice.
We had an
Nice.
experiment on Tuesday and it was a smashing success. So we're going to do it.
Good.
And I have a
Good.
funder. So.
Well, a lot of your people are up to speed on the virtual aspect of things these days.
That's the huge challenge. It's
Yeah.
kind of like the tree that falls in the forest. You put content out there, but there's nobody there to listen. Then did you make a noise? So we're developing the content, developing the reason for being, and then we'll work with seniors to get them introduced to technology. I think if you've got something that's relevant to them, then they will use technology. But if you tell them they should use technology and there's nothing relevant to them, they're not going to try it.
Right. Right. So you've got a good strong why proposition working.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Good.
that's what we're working on.
That's great.
But we had on Tuesday we did a virtual day of Prime Plus, and we had for our piano player we had over 500 views.
Wow. That's pretty good.
And for one of our longtime instructors, we had over 400 views. So
wow. What were you at?
We know it'll work.
Yeah.
Hey, I like our new member.
Say good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. And how are you doing?
I saw you just an ad call, but you're warning.
You have a very, very special mommy. Do you know that?
Thank you.
Thank you. My
She is
dad
one of my favorite
is
people.
laying down. Oh, can I go give the Spider-Man one? Spider-Man
No, I don't think so, baby. Here, you go play.
He was playing, Brandy.
He
had enough
wants
of
to
the
show you
task
guys
force
the
meeting.
Lego man that we built last night.
This was the one I was talking about.
There.
See? This
Yeah, raise it up so they can see. See? It does.
Oh,
Cool.
hey, that's great.
Okay, can I show you where it
All
goes?
right, come on. We gotta go.
Oh,
I know. Later, I will
He's like,
have
"You don't have
more
to- I don't
calls
have to."
today that you can jump on. Thank you.
That doll looked just like Mr. Bird.
Funny how that works.
How are you guys doing today?
Doing
Doing
good.
Yeah, excited.
Good. Good.
So where
Hello,
are you?
Iris.
I'm at home in my kitchen.
And you're staying there for a while? I really don't want to lose you to Northern Virginia.
With the pandemic and everything else, I don't plan on moving anytime soon. Especially not with 10,000 cases alone up there,
Well, yeah.
I'm okay.
And when they decide not to go to phase 1,
I know. I'm glad to hear that because they're rough up there. It's just so close quarters.
yeah.
And that's I was telling my boss yesterday actually. I was like, I like my space. Like, I like having a yard that the kid can go play in.
Yeah.
And those things are important. So, but we'll see. I told him it's not completely off the table, but it's not going to be anytime soon. So
Well, I know that a lot of employers are reevaluating what the relationship with their employees are going to look like.
yeah, I mean, a lot of companies have found that remote work is not that bad and people are productive and everything else. So we'll see. I know.
I think it's put a death nail though in that new fad about open seating and collaborative working by being in cubicles, and it killed the cubicle.
It may have, yeah. Especially since they're saying that, this may never go away. So
Yeah. I mean, if you have to go to the beach in a glass bottle, in a glass bubble, working in an open space may not be the right idea.
Right, right. Well, I'm gonna get a cup of coffee before everybody gets on the call. So
Okay.
I'll
That
see you
sounds
guys in
good.
just a minute.
Good morning, Iris. A couple of weeks ago, of course, our church has gone all viral, all virtual.
Right.
And the third and fourth grade Sunday school class is now on Monday school. It's really been kind of cool. I mean, you've invited now the families into the Sunday school class instead of having the families drop off the kid.
Oh, right. Hadn't even
And
thought
so
of
the
that.
teacher that's been doing this has been a Sunday school teacher forever. I mean, he's the type that has 10 years worth of curriculum, one of those.
Right.
So he asked me if I could help with his class a couple of weeks ago. And he was doing giving a lesson on the Lord's Prayer. So he started the session off with the Lord's Prayer, but he wanted God to interrupt him. And he chose that I had a God voice. So I had to sign on to Zoom.
Sure do. I hadn't thought of that, but yeah, right on.
and not put my name in and not go video, so I just had an asterisk. So they had promoted that there'd be a special guest in the class in the Sunday school. And it was so fun watching the kids react to this, booming voice coming
Yeah,
in.
yeah. You
'Cause it
got
was
that
a
James
scripted
Earl
dialogue.
Jones thing going on. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was a scripted dialogue, so it was kind of cool.
Oh, that's great. That's great. I love it.
And then at the end was this big reveal. But this has been, this is Brandy's dream to have a mute button for me.
Well, that's right. You are in the control seat, Brandy.
I am.
Good
Okay, that's
morning.
Good
Hey,
morning.
that's
Good morning,
enough.
Iris. How you doing?
Hi.
I am well, thank you.
Thank you.
I love your artwork, Miss Iris.
Thank you very much.
Are you adding
What a
artwork?
great
as
backdrop
goes
for
along?
you. That's wonderful.
What did you say, Bob?
Are you adding artwork as this goes along?
Adding.
You
mean
seem to have
now?
more artwork than you did the last meeting we were in.
Yeah. There are a few pieces. I'm shamelessly posting behind me.
Well, I love your building and how you celebrate the puzzles that have been put together over the years by putting them in the hall.
Oh yeah, they're missing that right now, so it's been
Yeah.
kind of rough for our seniors here.
Hmm.
They had to close down all of our community spaces. And so our residents are not able to do their puzzles together. So hopefully that will end soon for them.
Yeah.
Good morning, Hope.
Morning, Hope.
Good morning, Hope.
You're muted, Hope.
I unmuted you, Hope.
Okay, hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How's everyone?
Well, thank you.
Good.
Good.
Well, that's excellent. How's everybody doing during this quarantine?
Well, the
I'm
garden
driving my
looks
wife
good.
nuts.
Are you really quarantined or are we playing?
Hmm.
If you call a daily trip to the post office as my big outing playing.
Okay, that's kind of quarantined then. You're kind of quarantined. Is Jeff on the line?
Yeah, Jeff's
I'm
right
here.
there.
Good morning, Hope.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jeff, for being our speaker today.
Oh, you bet. My pleasure. Looking forward to it.
There you are. All right.
Hopefully we have a few more people get on the call. I know last month we had quite a few people. I'm pretty sure Micah is getting on the call. Baby, go outside, please.
I will stay with you as long as I can. Our staff coffee and chat starts at 10, so I'll need to leave in time to set up for that. We've been enjoying getting together on Friday mornings, so it's been pretty awesome because so many of our staff are all working remote, and we haven't seen each other except when we get together on Friday mornings.
Mm.
So I will stay with you as long as I can.
That's cool.
Oh, and then tonight we're doing employee appreciation. We're doing a paint night, virtual.
Oh,
So we're excited.
you sound like you're enjoying working remotely.
Well, yeah, somewhat. You know, Iris on the Go is stifled right now, so I'm having to do everything virtually. So it's just trying to do what I do without being on site. So it seems to help that so many people are actually taking advantage of technology. Even the churches, especially the churches.
Yeah, they've done an awesome job.
All right. Wow, this is the quietest I think I've ever heard anybody be at a task force meeting.
I'm working through the cup of coffee.
I'm setting up my notebook to take notes.
Well, I debated about putting an overshirt on or just keeping the t-shirt. So I did comb the hair.
I know, I almost
And I have pants on.
well, that's good. That's good. Good.
I'm barefooted with shorts on, but you can't really tell.
I didn't say what kind of pants.
A few weeks ago, I started, even when I was working from home, because I have some office days since we only have one person in an office at a time to support our caregivers. So I still go to the office 3 to 4 days a week to man that spot and be able to focus a little bit better without the child. But when I work from home, I make sure to still get up and get dressed like I'm going to work and then sit down. It's done amazing things for my psyche. Like it just makes me more productive. I don't get so depressed, like, oh, I'm stuck here again, you know. So it's been really helpful.
Well, the other day I got an email from one of our board members who wanted to discuss some things with me and wanted to do it in person. And she lives in a place that has a large patio, so we could social distance. And it was really, I headed out to the Jeep to go. I was so excited about having a face-to-face. I said, "Ooh, I'm going to take my portfolio with me, just in case I have to take notes." Not like I was going to a real meeting. It was really good.
I do miss people. Josh and I were talking about it the other day, and I did not realize that I contact, like on a routine basis, between like 100 and 150 people a week. So that to go from that to 20 people a week through my organization and a few through email and stuff, it's a big difference, huge difference.
Steve Zolas and I are in a collaborative partnership putting together a project, and we've been doing it through Zoom once a week. And then we had a follow-up meeting where it was an old-fashioned conference call. And it was just, I mean, it was lacking because we didn't get that nonverbal reaction. So there'd be this dead silence. And it's like, this is how we used to communicate.
I used to hate conference calls because people are talking over each other, or they're waiting to talk, like you just said. And then it's just too much on a phone, especially when you're like this and you're trying to take notes or something like that. It's rough. I used to hate being on video, and now I'm much more comfortable with it.
Yep. It's like public speaking.
A little bit better. It's getting better.
I've got a 10 o'clock tech call because I can't do Zoom. My camera doesn't work when I'm signed on to the cloud with Prime Plus.
Ah.
So I guess there's a way of doing that, and I'm just going to sit there and watch my cursor go around.
Who is this? Somebody has a phone number, but it doesn't say your name. Okay. Should we give everybody a minute or two, or it's 9:03 now?
I say let's get going.
Okay, well then, Hope, you want to, so the agenda today, Hope, is Jeff, part of his presentation includes a piece for us to get to know each other a little bit better. So we're going to skip introductions for now. If you would like to, as more people get on, if you would like to share your contact information in the chat, who you are, who you work for, your email address or phone number is fine. I'm going to be sharing some information about Jeff in the chat as well after Hope does her introduction. And so we are going to go ahead and jump into the presentation because it is the meat of our meeting today. So, and I think that you all will very much enjoy what Jeff has to speak about. So, Hope, if you wouldn't mind giving the quick introduction of Jeff.
Okay, well, good morning, everyone. Jeff is, today's speaker is Jeffrey Bird with Jeffrey Bird Coaching. Jeff is a certified speaker, trainer, and coach with the John Maxwell team. He is a certified DISC behavioral trainer, podcaster on Empowerment Living with Jeff Bird at jeffbirdcoaching.com/broadcast. Also on Apple Podcasts, iHeart, Spotify, Talk Network, Radio, and others. Jeff is also an author of Who Says So? Understanding the Messages That Shape Our Hearts. He is available on Amazon, or the book is Barnes & Noble's, Books A Million, and others. Didn't know that, Jeff. That's awesome.
Thank you. That's recent.
He is the founder of Bird Young Leaders School in Pakistan at facebook.com/bird brick. Is it Brick and Kids?
Brick Kiln Kids. Yeah. We changed the name later, but that stuck.
And his famous quote is, "He who refreshes another will himself be refreshed." Solomon. So we want to again thank Jeff for being our speaker today. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Jeffrey Bird with Jeff Bird Coaching.
Well, thanks so much, Hope, for that lovely introduction. And thanks everybody for being here. We get to talk about one of my favorite things today, which is stories and connecting to people on the basis of their stories. So like Brandy mentioned, what I wanted to do is kick off the self-introductions with just a few questions that I like to ask in this presentation. And so if everybody can think through these things, and then we can just share our answers. But the first one is, what city were you born in? What city were you born in? That's number one. Question number two is, what was your favorite childhood hobby? Favorite childhood hobby. And question number three is, what was your first job? What was your first job? So again, what city were you born in? What was your favorite childhood hobby? And what was your first job? And I guarantee we're going to get to know something about each other that we didn't know before, just on these simple questions. So, so if anybody wants to kick us off, we can just go around until everybody shared their answers to those things.
I better share early so I remember the questions.
Okay.
Beaufort, South Carolina, Bob Batcher, Beaufort, South Carolina, the only town in America where there's a guard to make sure nobody gets out. That's where Parris Island is. My first job was for 10 days I made pizzas, and then I came down with pneumonia. And see, I forgot the third question already.
Well, it was your first job, and then what was your favorite childhood hobby?
Well, my favorite childhood hobby was designing and building houses, model houses, all by myself. I like being by myself in the basement.
Very
Nice.
cool.
Nice.
Very cool.
Do you still have any of those houses you built?
No, but I have the designs
Oh, nice.
locked away somewhere.
Cool.
Very cool. I'll go next. I was born in Jacksonville, North Carolina, on the base of Camp Lejeune, when they still had a hospital. And then my favorite childhood hobby was probably swimming. Next to that would be probably writing poetry. And then my first job was, like many girls, I was a babysitter. But my first real job was working for my uncle in his landscaping
Nice. Learning new things already.
company.
I'll go next. So Brandy, I was also born at Camp Lejeune
Wow.
when there was a hospital, and I'm sure it was many years before your birth. My favorite childhood hobby was sewing and dancing. And my first job actually was doing what I do now. I was volunteering at a neighborhood center, and I got hired there. And so I've continued ever since high school to do what I do now. So I'm excited.
Wow, that's amazing. You found your passion early on.
Yeah, I did.
That's great. That's great. Who else? If anybody else has joined, the three questions are: what city were you born in? What was your favorite childhood hobby? And what was your first job?
Hi, my name is Peggy Brown, and I think I heard somebody mention earlier, somebody with the phone number that may be me. Couldn't say anything right then to where I was, but jumping on now. So I was born in Macon, Georgia. Favorite childhood hobby was writing. And the third one was my first job. I was a shampoo tech at a salon.
Nice, very nice. Thank you.
I go next. The city I guess I was born in was Washington, D.C. And my hobby was photography growing up. Passed it on to my kids, of course. And I guess my first unreal job, I'll say, was babysitting. And my first teenage job, I actually stayed with my grandmother. She lived in Williamsburg. I actually worked at the Pottery in the gift shop.
Nice. Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I was a teenager.
Wonderful. Used to love that place.
Me too.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you, Hope.
All right.
Okay, and who's next?
Hey guys, it's Mary Dorf. Sorry I was a little late jumping on. So short, funny little story about my place that I was born. I was always told that I was born in Buffalo, New York. And I was probably in my early 20s before I actually took a look at my birth certificate, and I was born in Amherst, New York. And when I told my husband about it, he couldn't believe I'd been lying to him all these years. So yes, Amherst, New York. Favorite childhood hobby was, I kind of dabbled in a lot of things, but I would say probably my nose was in a book. I was happy. And first job was dog sitting for my grandma's little dachshund, but first real job was bussing tables at a restaurant.
Nice. Amazing. Amazing what we find out over the years about our own story, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. That's cool. Thank you. Who's next?
Hey, good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Jackie Wallace on the call. So I was actually born in Fort Riley, Kansas. Don't remember much about the place. I believe it was a pit stop. We were probably on our way somewhere.
Wow.
Childhood hobby would definitely be praise dancing in church. I remember doing that. And then my very first job, I was a DJ at a skating rink.
Wow. That's amazing. That's yeah.
I
First
like that.
hobby, praise
cool.
dancing. That's great. Your photo looks like you'd be great for that. All right. Thank you. Thank you. And who do we have next?
This is Cynthia. I actually just joined, so if I could, somebody could tell me what the questions are.
Sure. So, so the three questions are: what city were you born in? What was your favorite childhood hobby? And what was your first job?
Okay, my name is Cynthia Tyler. My favorite childhood hobby was sewing. I used to love to make my own garments, and then I would always make something matching that went with it, whatever it was. I used to love carrying keychains, so I would make something that hung on my keychain that matched what I wore. My first job, my first job was working with my mother. My mother had her own business, and she was a cosmetologist, and she would put me to work. Every day after school, I had to go to the shop and help her out, and she paid me. So that's why I'm going to say that's my first job. She paid me to work there.
Nice, nice. You're the first one that mentioned the family business. Yeah, usually that's a thread there, but yeah, that's cool that you got to do that. Neat. And did you say the city you were born in?
I was born in Norfolk.
Oh, oh yeah. Hey, wow, another Norfolk native. Yeah, me too.
Well, glad to be here.
Excellent. Glad to have you here. So thank you. And who's next? So we got a couple more on.
Nanette, you want to go next? I'm going to pick you and you.
Good morning, everyone. So my hometown where I was born, it really isn't even on the map. It's a little town called Lizella, Georgia. The town was named after two sisters, Liza and Ella. So it's outside of Macon, so right in the center of Georgia, where it is very, very hot, very, very humid, and no breeze.
I know where Lizella, Georgia is.
You do not?
Yes, I'm from Georgia, and I was born in Macon, Georgia.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yes,
so you go out on Route 80, Eisenhower Parkway, hang a left on South Lizella Road. We're down on the right.
That's too funny.
That is hilarious. I think you were the only person I've ever met that actually knew where Lizella was.
Wow.
And I say that about when I tell people where I'm from too, and I'm like, okay, you never heard of it. So that's funny that you said that. I'm sitting here like, what?
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Actually, Nanette, I used to coordinate blood drives there back in the late 70s.
Are you serious?
With the Red Cross, that was my territory.
Wow. Okay. So I'm assuming the blood drive was in Macon.
No, it was throughout that whole area. So we had them in small towns.
Wow. Yeah, it has grown now. I mean, there's a great lake there called Lake Tobesofkee where you can go swimming and fishing and boating and skiing and everything. So, you know, it was a good small town to grow up in, which sort of leads me to my hobbies, which were swimming and riding a bike. There wasn't a whole lot else to do, you know. You could play softball, but I wasn't great at softball, so I love to swim and ride my bike. So my first job, I think like a lot of people in their teens, probably more so young ladies, but of course I babysat. That was the first responsibility that I had. And then I had a girlfriend whose dad worked at a lighting factory. So she and I would work a couple of hours on the weekend putting together light fixtures, like chandeliers and things like that. But my first, you know, that was, of course, on the side. But my first real job where they took out taxes and things like that was a place called Munchie's Pizza, which was out in California in Orange County. And
Nice.
Munchie's Pizza was the best. So funny story with that. I asked the owner one time, I'm like, well, how did you come up with the name Munchie's Pizza? And of course, this was back in the 70s, late 70s and going into the early 80s. And he's like, well, how do you think I came up with that name? So just use your imagination with that on how he came up with Munchie's Pizza.
That's hilarious. Thanks, Danette. Wow, I just learned some new things.
Yeah.
And who's next? Do we have anybody else who hasn't gone? Okay.
Yes, this is April.
Hey, April.
Can y'all hear me? Hi. I was born in Salisbury, North Carolina. And as a hobby, when I was younger, I used to read and crochet. My grandmother taught me how to crochet at a young age. So we used to sit and kind of do that together. Now I'm getting ready to date myself. I could not work as a teenager because my father said, you have to work darn near the rest of your life. You need to enjoy your teenage years. So he would not let me work. So my first job, and that's why I say I'm dating myself, was CMP Telephone Company.
Wow. Wow. I remember that. And great dad.
Yeah. So I was kind of like at the beginning of assembly line, but I was sitting down putting in orders, and then they had a belt, and the order would go down to the appropriate person.
Wow. Wow.
So it was done manually.
That's amazing. Yeah. Neat. Neat. Well, thank you very much. And do we have anybody else that hasn't gone yet? Okay, I think we're good then. So, and this just goes to show, you know, if we were all together, I'd say, yeah, by a show of hands, how many people just learned something new and interesting about somebody they've known for a while, right? Because I'm assuming, I mean, many of you I've known for a while, right? We learn things new. So, just to give you mine, so I'm also a Norfolk native. I was just born right up the street in Centera when it used to be Norfolk General. My favorite hobby when I was a kid was astronomy. I couldn't wait for my dad and his coworker, who was an amateur astronomer, to take me out to Mount Trashmore back before Virginia Beach was saturated with light pollution, and you could still see some stars. And we'd go out there and watch the stars, the nebula, the moon. And my first job was actually newspaper delivery. I took a paper route when I was in 9th grade to pay for a bird watching trip to Texas during spring migration, during the same time frame that we're in now. So that was mine. But the thing about the stories is, boy, they're engaging, right? I mean, I've got more questions we could ask, and we could just spend the whole morning just telling and sharing our stories, and nobody would be bored. I can just assure you of that. I mean, just you know, the town in Georgia that Nanette thought nobody knew about, and here we are, got multiple people on this little call that know about it, right? So, and that's the same thing with seniors. I was telling Brandy the other day, I told her, I said, you know, when I was working in durable medical equipment and adaptive equipment for mobility, it took me years to realize this, but one day it hit me, and it hit me that, hey, nobody that I ever talk to that ever calls in about this wants to be having this call with me. Nobody does. You know, but they're doing it because they need it. But what people do like to do is to talk about their stories, talk about their background, make connections with people like we just did. And it's fun, right? And so that got me thinking on the story thing and how important the stories are. And one of the things I love about stories is that before we know somebody else's story, all we see are externals, right? We see what they look like, where they live, what kind of car they drive, how they dress. We just see external things. But once we know the story, then we see the inner things. We can connect on those. And I'm gonna share my screen with you now and see if I can go through the PowerPoint here with you. We start seeing the internal things. We can connect on the inside once we start knowing the stories. And that's why the stories are so powerful, I think. You know, if like this slide says, if eyes are the windows of our soul, we've all heard that, then stories are the windows of our lives. And Mr. Rogers once said, you know, you can love anybody once you know their story. You know, even if what they're doing is not the best thing in the world, you can still understand it, and you can still care about them once you know their story. One of the most powerful stories are extremely powerful. Stories have changed the world, and one of the examples that I often think of when I think about that is Abraham Lincoln. And maybe you've heard that the first time he ever met Harriet Beecher Stowe, he looked at her with a little twinkle in his eye, and he said, "So this is the little lady that wrote the book that made this great war." And he was speaking, of course, about the Civil War and about her book, Uncle Tom's Cabin. And so I got to thinking about that. I thought, well, that's a very powerful statement by President Lincoln. I thought, well, I started thinking about, well, what was behind that? What was in the book? And it occurred to me, all Harriet Beecher Stowe did was tell a story. She just told a story. And she changed the nation, and she changed much of the world. But what she did in that story was she just talked about things on the inside that people could relate to. She talked about hope. She talked about dreams. She talked about romance and family and tyranny and slavery and oppression. she talked about things that could connect people. And by the time she was finished writing that book, she had taken a lot of people who outwardly appeared different, maybe socioeconomically, geographically, racially, educationally. There were all these apparent differences and all these justifications people were using, and she demolished them by telling a story that people could connect to on the inside. And she did several things. It occurred to me there's a process of stories that occurred here. The first thing is a story creates understanding. We have all those aha moments, right? It's like, oh my gosh, I never realized that, right? I never realized some of the things that I just heard this team share, right? I never understood. So they create understanding. And then understanding leads to, and this is my favorite one, understanding leads to appreciation. And I tell you, I think appreciation in teams, in families, in relationships, in friendships, appreciation, in my opinion, is one of the most underutilized free gifts that's available to us. It can change the world. For example, my wife, if any of you all are veterans and my wife found out and we were all together, she'd be coming right after you, hugging you and thanking you for your service to our country. She just loves to show appreciation to veterans. And sometimes we'll be walking through the grocery store and I'll be pushing the cart and just kind of chatting randomly. And then I'll turn and realize that, hey, I'm just chatting to the air. My wife's gone. She saw somebody in a veteran's hat halfway back across the store and she's taken off to go and thank them. Right. And one time she did this. I wasn't with her this time, but she saw a man in a Vietnam veteran's hat, and he had a young child, maybe 5 or 6 years old with him. And she went over to him and she bent down and she said to the child, "Did you know that your grandpa is a hero?" And he looked up at his grandpa and he said, "Really, Grandpa, you're a hero?" And when she stood back up and looked at the veteran, he had tears running down his cheeks. And he told her, he said, "No one has ever said that to me." Right. And this was probably 35 years after he got back from Vietnam. And all those years, all the sacrifice he had made, what he had done, went unappreciated and he went unthanked for it. And just a random stranger in a grocery store coming up and saying, "Hey, thank you for what you did," immediately brought those emotions that were just underneath the surface. And now, don't you know that when the two of them left that store, that both the veteran and my wife were both about 6 feet off the ground when they left? Right? So it brings up appreciation. And appreciation is just a powerful thing. One other story on appreciation. I have a good friend. Some of you all probably know her. She used to be the marketing director at an assisted living in Virginia Beach. And when I first got into the marketing group there, they were hosting a lot of events, and she was always putting them on, and it looked like she never broke a sweat. Everything was just always went flawlessly. She always looked very put together, very elegant, very not sweating anything. And so many other events, it takes a lot to put an event on, and we tend to sweat it, and sometimes it shows, but not her. And so after a few events, I went up to her and I said, "Wow," I said, "I'd like a pint of what you're drinking. You seem to have it going on here. Can we meet up and let me pick your brain a little bit?" And she said, "Sure, that'd be fine." So we met up right after work one evening and for a bite. And we were just kind of getting to know each other and talking just about various things, sharing our stories. And she mentioned that in the past year or two, she had been divorced. And she mentioned it very casually. So I just asked her very casually back. I said, "Well, do you think there's any chance for reconciliation or that you'd ever get married again?" And she became really serious. Never seen her that way before. And she looked me in the eye and she said, "I will never give that much to anyone again." So we sat there silently for a couple of minutes until I said, "Maybe the problem wasn't that you gave too much, but that you were appreciated too little." And she started crying also. And that was the day I started realizing that very often performance problems aren't really performance issues. Performance problems are very often appreciation issues. If you take two kids and one of them comes out of a home where they feel very appreciated and valued and supported, and you have another one who doesn't, now that's not that they can't overcome that, but it's going to be some work. But which one of them would you put your money on to doing something really successful down the road? Yeah, the one who was appreciated, right? So very often that's the case. But appreciation, we get those aha moments when we learn a story, and then we start to understand people better and appreciate them. And we go, wow, now I kind of get what it's like to walk a mile in their shoes, so to speak. Wow, that must have been rough. That must have been tough. I'm amazed, that you made it through that and overcame it and are here now. And then the next thing that it leads to, after those are in place, the third thing, and this is back to the case of the Civil War, is participation. Once the story's told and the understanding's in place and then appreciation of a person comes up, so often it's just our human nature to want to do something about it, right? We want to get involved, want to make a difference somehow. And so you get enough people involved, and then what you get is significant results. Sometimes it can happen with just an individual understanding. We can make an individual difference, but a lot of times that's what happens in movements. A whole lot of people start to understand and appreciate something, and then they want to participate, and then they start the movement, and then significant results come out of it. But that's the process of our stories. Most of our stories fall along those paths. And again, when you get seniors, because I've given this presentation over the last 5 years to tons of senior groups, and they love it. Once you get them talking, you can't, the problem is getting them to stop talking. I've had so much trouble reining it in. They might be a little shy at first, but once they start talking personally and start feeling comfortable, boy, do they have some incredible stories. And they love to participate in that. I was telling Brandy yesterday that I gave this presentation for one assisted living, and we had an hour and a half. 45 minutes for me to share, and then 45 minutes for them to answer questions. And I had to go at the end of that hour and a half because I had another appointment. But the activities director told me the next time I saw her, she said, we went for your hour and a half, and then they stayed for another full hour talking about their stories with each other after you were gone. She said, we couldn't hardly get them out of the room because people enjoy that much. So, and that's one thing too. It makes, somebody mentioned Micah might have been on the call, but when it comes to engaging with seniors, just like my experience, a lot of the services we provide, they really don't want to need those services, right? Truth be told. But if we get them engaged on the personal level and care for them as people and see them as people with very interesting and one-of-a-kind stories like Micah and Greg Realty do, that's been the basis of a shout out to them. That's been the basis of their work, is just helping people any way they can, getting to know them, getting to understand, taking the time to find out what's important to them, and then helping them. And then it's worked very well. But now with stories, we understand, and this is good to know because all of us fall into this in some way or another, some more so than others. But there are problems in stories, right? And if we were to break out a pen and paper and write down people we know who have had parts of their stories that were difficult, right? And we all probably have some of those parts ourselves that we still have to work on, probably on a daily basis. But there are problems of stories that come up that can take a lifetime to work through sometimes, or at least a significant amount of time. And the problems of those stories are that all stories contain messages, right? Every story has a message about something. Sometimes that message is hidden, but it's there. But the stories contain messages, and the messages are formed one of two ways, either during time-space repetition or during a traumatic episode. And time-space repetition is just the same thing that occurs over and over and over and over again. I had a young lady come up to me one time, and she was a CNA, and she told me, she said, hey, I really want to be a nurse, but I'm just not sure I can do it. She seemed very put together. She seemed very intelligent. She was very articulate, and she seemed very passionate about helping people through the nursing field. And I told her, I said, well, you seem like the ideal candidate to me. I mean, I don't know you really well, but you seem like you'd be the perfect person for the job. I said, why is it that you think it might not be for you? And she said, well, ever since I was a small child, everything I ever wanted to do, my mom would always tell me, you can't do that. That's not for you. You need to give up on that. You're not fast enough, smart enough, pretty enough, popular enough, rich enough, blah, blah, blah. You're not. So now here's an adult with a highly capable person. She was doubting everything she did because of these messages that were formed during time-space repetition. The second way is during a traumatic episode. Think 9/11, right? that contained messages. They contained messages about our national security, about safety in air travel, about other nations and cultures and our relationships to them. We woke up that morning in one frame of mind, and by the time we went to bed that evening, our perception, our belief system had been radically transformed by the messages that came to us during that day. Right? So those are usually the two ways that messages are formed: time, space, repetition, and a traumatic episode. Now, the problem with that is that many of the messages that we receive in either of those ways are false. Take the CNA, for instance. The messages that she had received and had come to believe were absolutely false, even though it came from her mom. False. Just having a respected position doesn't mean you've got a corner on the truth, right? And as in her case, they can be extremely damaging. Because they speak to all the messages, they speak to at the very core level, they speak to our identity and to our worth, all right? And they tell us who we are, and we can either believe them or not, to our betterment or not, but they speak to our identity and our worth. So years ago, I had a friend that after knowing me for quite a while, she shared about a horrific experience, a series of abuses that went on for many years during her early teen years. And it was just horrible. And I really wanted to help her make a difference. So I was searching for some wisdom. I was praying for wisdom, really wanted to help her. And that's where this came to me from it occurred to me, okay, so the abuse she's talking about she's been out of that for 35 years. But there's something still there. And I kept asking the question, what is still there? What is still there? What's causing the problem? And I realized it was a message that she received about her identity and her worth. So once that became clear, I thought, okay, well, what's the truth? I don't want to be like the people who spot counterfeit money. They don't study counterfeits. Otherwise, as soon as they got a handle on one counterfeit, the counterfeiter would just switch it up a little bit and come up with another counterfeit. They study what a real dollar bill looks like, or 20 or 100. Because once they're acutely aware of what a real one looks like, they can immediately spot a false one. And they can, no matter how, what way the falsehood appears, they can still identify it because they know what a real one looks like. And so I thought, okay, so what is the truth about our identity and our worth? Okay, and I came up with a few things that are true of all of us. And the first one is that we all have infinite value. We have infinite value. And I like to ask people sometimes for a show of hands if we're in person. I say, how many people are parents? And usually quite a, yeah, thank you. I see that, Brandy, and Bob. So I could only see 3 other people right now. But so hopefully there's a lot of hands going up. And I ask them, I say, okay, I want you to think back to the first time that your first child was ever placed in your arms. Okay, you got it if you're a parent? Okay, and then I like to ask, was there any question in your mind that child had infinite value? Any question at all? No. I've never had a taker. I had one woman almost put her hand up, and then she said, nah, it had infinite value. See, because the value, he hadn't done anything good or bad, he or she hadn't done anything right or wrong, good or bad, nothing successful, nothing as a failure. They hadn't done anything. And this is because value isn't dependent on our performance. We don't perform our way into value. We understand our value into better performance, but we're born with infinite value. Okay, the next one, get that to pop up there. Come on, cursor, there we go. Okay, so the next one is we all have infinite potential. Oops, I went too far. Infinite potential. We all have infinite potential. There's nobody who could come to any of us after this meeting's over and say, hey, you can't go do such and such and such. For a lot of people, you'd be like, oh yeah, just watch, that would get you going. So we all have infinite potential. The only person who can cap our potential is ourselves through our belief system, right? If we, somebody said, there's an old quote, I don't know where it came from, but it said, whether you believe you can or believe you can't, you're right. I think it might've been Henry Ford. So we all have infinite potential. And then the next one is we all have an infinite capacity to love and to be loved. Nobody ever woke up one morning with their family and said, oh my goodness, guys, I'm so sorry for you. I was only born with 5,386 units of love and I used my last one yesterday. There's no love left for you. So sorry. Like the soup Nazi, you know what I'm saying? No soup for you, no love for you. It doesn't work that way, right? It doesn't work that way. And the reason that these things are infinite, that I put infinite in front of all of them, is because like this, these are not quantifiables. You can't hoard love and stick it in a vault somewhere. You can't do it. These are all functions of spirit, right? And as such, they are infinite, okay? And then the last one here is we all have the infinite ability to create positive change in the world around us. There is no telling what idea you might come up with next and the influence that it has and the change that it brings about and the lives that it touches, right? That's just the truth of it. So, and nobody can cap that. Again, only ourselves, kind of similar to the potential, only ourselves, only by our limiting beliefs, our negative self-judgments, our inner critics. If we listen to those voices, we can cap ourselves. Okay, so let's not do that. If anybody doubts any of those things I just said, I have two words for you. Nelson Mandela, right? Nelson Mandela. Okay, guy, imprisoned for 27 years on this tiny island off the coast of South Africa. He could see the mainland. He could see Table Rock. He could see his home. But for 27 years, he was stuck in that prison because he believed in the value of his people. So there can be a price tag to pay for truly valuing yourself or other people. But Nelson Mandela is just a great illustration. But I know that did not come easy. I know there were days he doubted all of those things. And he had to press through, and he had to keep believing the right thing. And he had to have the right people who were supporting him. And so what that tells me is that there's a daily agenda about this. This doesn't come easily. Believing the right things doesn't necessarily come easy. Getting the right messages from our stories or even getting out of our story to connect with other people's stories. But there's a few things that we can do daily to help ourselves with this. And that's number one, to realize that success is determined by our daily agenda. Right? It's what we do on a regular basis over and over and over that determines our outcomes. Success doesn't just happen overnight. It's kind of like the man that said, I worked 20 years to be an overnight success. It's what we're doing on a daily basis. Just like Miss Iris said at the beginning here in sharing that, she found her passion early on. And she hasn't deviated from it. She knew it. She knew what she loved and where she connected, and she's been doing it and doing it and doing it and doing it. And now she's great at it. So, but it was the daily agenda, doing the same thing over and over and over, telling ourselves the right thing, connecting to the right messages in our stories. And the next thing is that good thinking produces good results. Right? We know that's true. You can't have a bunch of negative thinking and and have a positive outcome. You have to put good thinking in. For illustration, if y'all remember the story of David and Goliath. Okay, this is a classic story of that. So, if you remember the story, there's a whole army, the whole Israelite army is at war with this Philistine army, and they do man-to-man combat back then. And so there's this giant named Goliath on the Philistine army, and he's just got everybody on the Israeli army shaking in their shoes. Nobody will come out to face him because they're all thinking, he's so big, he's going to hurt me. That was their thinking. He's so big, he's going to hurt me. Now, little David comes along, little shepherd boy comes along, and he looks at the guy, and he's like, well, he's so big, I can't miss. Let me at him. So finally, he just takes a slingshot and some stones, and bam, hits him in the head, kills him, cuts off his head, takes it back to the king that afternoon. It's like, okay, next problem. Let's move along here, because he had good thinking. He had good thinking. He remembered historically how he had taken care of some other issues and how God had helped him. And then, boy, he goes in with good thinking, solves the problem, and he's off and running. Did in one day what the whole Israeli army couldn't do in an extended period of time. So good thinking produces good results. And then next one, this is one of the difficult ones here in stories. But one of my favorite things to ask seniors is about, what are some of the difficulties that you would never wish on anybody that you went through, and what did you learn from them? And boy, do they have the stories on that. But that is, daily difficulties are the soil in which good thinking develops. I haven't met too many people who came up to me and said, boy, Jeff, I just got back from this 2-week beach vacation, and I was just sitting on the beach one evening with my umbrella drink, watching the sunset and the dolphins playing. Boom, just like 3 years of wisdom hit me. I just walked off of that beach. I was so wise. You know, it doesn't happen that way. It's the difficulties like our whole world is going through now. And if we look at it that way, say, hey, there's some good thinking here somewhere that can develop in the midst of these difficulties. And that's why I like talking to the seniors, because they have been through it. They have been through difficulties. You know, I saw the post going around about the 113-year-old woman that had survived the Spanish flu, both world wars. Now she overcame COVID. Wow, boy, I bet she's got some tales to tell, yeah? Because she certainly has the difficulty she's overcome. But that's how so we have to learn to not resent the daily difficulties. It's easy to do. We want things to work. We want things to go smoothly. We want things to be comfortable. But sometimes those difficulties are where our greatest development comes from and our greatest future good and usefulness. And then last, Wayne Dyer said that if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Right. And that's really true. It's like, okay, you know, in a book by I think it was Sean Achor, the Pursuit of Happiness. One of the characteristics of the five characteristics of the happiest people in the world are that they look at things from the greatest number of perspectives possible. Right? They don't just look at it from one single narrow focus. They look at it from as many viewpoints as they can, and they choose the one that's the most beneficial. And changing the way we look at things often changes the things we look at. So this process, this daily, I like to call it the wax on, wax off process, because every challenge that we come to gives us another opportunity. And if you probably remember the story of the Karate Kid, you know, Daniel there, he's getting bullied by this karate gang, and Mr. Miyagi, who's the maintenance man at the apartments where he and his mother live, takes him under his wing and wants to teach him karate. And so he brings him over his house, and he gives him all these house projects to do. He's sanding the deck, staining the fence, washing the cars, and he's about to give up. But Mr. Miyagi talks him into staying, and the last task he gives him to do is to go out and wax all these beautiful antique cars. So he's out waxing, just scrubbing, and Mr. Miyagi comes out and says, no wax. Wax on, wax off. Wax on, wax off. And nobody, including Daniel, understands the meaning of all of this that he's going through until he actually gets in the match with the lead karate bully. And the karate bully throws a punch, and he instinctively does the same motion as waxing the car and blocks the punch. And then we're all like, oh, there's the wisdom of Mr. Miyagi. He knew that the repetition in the mundane would create the best results when it counted. And that's so often the way with us. You know, and you see so many seniors, and you see some that I mean, they're just bright, they're just bubbly. Nothing's going to get them down because they've learned the right way of looking at things. And you see others who are just depressed and not engaged. And that's because they haven't learned the right way of approaching things and looking at things. And we can help in that the more we understand it and get their stories. I want to give you just a couple of quick stories. The story, everybody knows who this is. This is Warren Buffett. And Linda Kaplan Thaler, most people don't know her. She's the woman who owns the company that created the Aflac duck, right? And they took Aflac from being this virtually unknown tiny supplemental insurance company to being one of the top 10 most widely recognized brands on the globe. But she wanted to get this interview with Warren Buffett. And she finally did. She got it set up. She was in New York. He's in Omaha. She had to pay all her expenses, and they would only give her 10 minutes. So she thought to herself, she said, well, if they're only giving me 10 minutes, I'm going to make this the best 10 minutes I can have. So she started reading everything she could about Warren Buffett. And what she found out was this tiny little piece of information that everyone else had overlooked. And that is that his favorite drink is a cherry Coke. So guess what she did? On her way up to the interview, she stopped, spent $2 on a bottle of cherry Coke, got a cup of ice. When he came into the room, she sat down, she poured it, she put it in front of her. She said, I thought we'd start with something I know you like. And he looked at her and he said, young lady, he said, in all my years of doing interviews, nobody has ever brought me a cherry Coke. You can take all the time you want. She turned a 10-minute interview into an hour-and-a-half interview with a $2 bottle of cherry Coke because she tuned into his story and what was important to him. I think so often in sales, you know, we often lose the connection with people because we come across as the only thing is what's important to me, not what's important to you and how can I help you. And so it's important when we tune into those stories, it creates huge opportunities for us by tapping into it and helping them with something that's important to them. And it's so important with the seniors. I mean, they've been around the block a few times and they can spot a mile away, if somebody's just there for themselves and to sell them something, or if somebody's there because they're there to help them, right? And this, this is a friend of mine, excuse me. She's a coach. She's a colleague of mine on John Maxwell team, and she's up in Canada. She's a brilliant woman, speaks 7 languages fluently, and she told a story a couple of years ago. There was this large Canadian organization that wanted to have coaching and training for their teams, and so they were going to bring in a bunch of coaches from all over the country and evaluate them, get their proposals, and then make a decision on who was going to train in what areas. They were going to bring on multiple coaches. Well, they flew her in, and she was working at her desk the first day, and she noticed she was being watched. So she looked up at the door, and she saw the face of a little bit older, big smile on his face, a few wrinkles, though, appeared to be an Asian man. And so she said, "Hey, how you doing?" And he just lit up when she spoke to him. He said, "Oh, Mrs. Joyce, it's so good to see you again." She was a little embarrassed because she didn't remember him. So she said, "Well, please remind me where we met." And he said, "I'm the janitor here." He said, "And a few years ago, you were here for another conference, and you saw me mopping the floors, and you stopped, and we spoke for a few minutes." And he remembered that little act of kindness and value all these years. And so she said, "Wow, that's great." So she was touched by that. She said, "Well, if you and your wife don't have any dinner plans, I'd love to take you out tonight." He said, "That'd be great." He was all excited. They made plans. She went back to work, but throughout the day, as she would come back from various meetings, he was dropping off all these little tchotchke mementos around her desk, things that people had left behind that he had accumulated as the janitor. And he was just dropping them off as tokens of friendship. So by the time she left that day, she had a pretty good accumulation. And just before she left, the vice president, who was going to be awarding the bids, came to her and said, hey, Joyce, I'm having dinner with all the other coaches this evening to get to know them a little better, and we were hoping you could join us. She thought, "Oh boy, I just made plans with the janitor, and now the VP's at my door asking me to go to dinner." But she saw that janitor's face and how happy he was, and she told the VP, she said, "I'm sorry, but I already have dinner plans tonight. Is it possible we can meet tomorrow?" And he said, "Yeah, sure, that'd be fine." So he went on. She had a great evening with the janitor and his wife. Came back the next morning. She's at her desk, and the VP comes to the door again, and he notices all the little tchotchke memento things and goes like, "What's up with all this stuff?" And she said, "Oh, a janitor who I've met in the past, your janitor here, he's been dropping them off as tokens of friendship." And he said, "I know exactly who you're talking about. He, as a matter of fact, I just ran into him on the way in this morning, and I know where you were last night." She thought, "Oh boy, here it comes. We're done here." And he said, "But I've come here to tell you that we are awarding you the entire national contract with no competition because you are exactly the kind of person we want training our teams." She thought she might have been walking away from the whole job opportunity. She ended up getting a $250,000 contract to train in all these offices because she saw value in the janitor. How cool is that, right? I love that. And but what happened? So I messaged her and I said, "Hey, I've been telling your story and people love it." She said, "Oh, well, let me tell you the rest of it." She said, they invited me back again to have dinner with the VP, but this time they also invited the CEO. But because they didn't want me to have any conflict of interest, they also invited the janitor. She said, while we were at dinner, they unrolled that they had a new outstanding loyalty and customer service award that they were going to give on an annual basis. The first one was going to the janitor because of our contact. And they flew her in for the award banquet. And this is her and Mr. Ng on the night of the award banquet. Now, his name, this is so cool. NG, we don't have names like that, but he's Mr. Ng, and his first name is Win. So they named it the Winning Award. And this was the night that they awarded that. So one more story. I'm not even gonna tell you the whole story in the interest of time, but this is another story about valuing people, getting to know their work, their stories, the messages in their stories, and helping them. And there's a school in Pakistan that I helped create back a number of years ago. And they're kids that work at the brick kilns. And the link, Brandy already sent the link, but we just get them to say positive affirmations to each other. And this is one, these girls standing in front of the brickyard, but holding up the sign, "You are a leader and a world changer." One of the best things we can do, we've talked about the negative messages that come through stories. One of the best things to do is pick up that pen and write the right messages into our stories and into the stories of the people that we work with, our families, the seniors we engage. Get to know the story and help write good new chapters by believing the truth. This is the little takeaway here. I sent this slide. Brandy, did you get the screenshot I took of this?
I did. I have it. I will send it out to the group in next week's email.
Okay, great. But these are just the takeaways. So, and it's spelled, I like an acronym. So this spells truth. And the first T is to tune into the messages of stories. Get on that same frequency as the other people and where they are with our stories. And the second thing is to recognize the value, just like my friend Joyce did with Mr. Ng. Recognize the value of each person. And then understand their potential. They may not see the potential. So many of us could tell stories about where we didn't see the potential in ourselves, but other people saw it and helped bring it out. I've got some stories about that. Then take time to add value. And let me tell you this, it doesn't have to be hard, it doesn't have to be expensive, and it doesn't have to take all day. Sometimes just a heartfelt smile and how are you? Actually looking at the person going, how are you doing? You know, take time to add some value. Make a compliment. Make it 30 seconds. You know, John Maxwell talks about the 30-second rule. Take some time to add value to people, and then head towards the great results together. If it's somebody that you know and you're going to be working along with. Sometimes it's just a momentary meeting, but if you can, go together as far as you can in light of the truth. So these are the 5 questions. We asked 3 of them to start with. We won't ask the others now, but I just wanted you to have them in case you ask them with your seniors, with your friends, with your family, with your church. So we did, what city are you born in? The 2 that we didn't get to is how many siblings do you have? And what birth order are you? That can be a very interesting one. And then what was your greatest struggle growing up? That's an extremely enlightening one too, and really helps you tune into that story and the message. So thanks so much. I'm sorry, we don't have a lot of time left. Sorry, that took a little bit longer than I thought, but that's all I've got. So keep looking up. And here's my contact info on the different things. I think Brandy already sent all of this. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and turn it back over to Brandy. But thank you for having me this morning. It's always a joy to talk about these things, and I'm so glad we got to do it.
Jeff, thank you so much. It's a powerful presentation. And I think it would have been fantastic to do it in person, but I think it was well received in this platform also. And I think a positive message that all of us benefit from, especially in the situations that we're in now. And you're absolutely correct. Learning the stories of people allow you to not only better help them, but make the relationship more fulfilling all the way around. And so thank you for taking the time today to share this. And I'm sure I have shared Jeff's contact information, and I will share it again. If I have time today, I'll try and send that email out today, but I don't want to make a promise I can't keep. So at the very latest, it will be at the in next week's weekly announcements. And if I have already shared some of Jeff's information, so if you would like to reach out to him about his coaching opportunities or having him present for some of your businesses, I'm sure he would be appreciative of that. So,
thanks, Brady.
For the sake, yes, of course, for the sake of time, if I remember correctly, there isn't a lot of committee reports to share. I know from the executive level, there is not anything to share outside of that. We are still looking for a secretary and a treasurer. I'd like to remind everybody that we start our summer break for June and July, so there are not monthly meetings next month or the month after, and we'll resume back in August. However, if you have any needs, questions, or anything else, if you have any questions about resources in Norfolk, or would like to connect with anybody, please feel free to reach out to myself or anybody else on the board. Hope, I know, is still working on trying to plan an event for the release of the senior resource guide for Norfolk later in the year. I think she's going to reach out to people individually to try and set up a committee so that could be worked on while we're on break. I know the executive board will still be meeting even though we're not having the membership meetings each month. So I'll be sending information as I can. If anybody would like to share anything with the group throughout the next few weeks, I will still be sending the weekly announcements. So you can send any information to me at Brandi, brandi.m.smith@outlook.com. And I'll reach out to some of the guests. Pete, it's nice to see you. And I think we had Jackie. This is, I think, her first meeting in a while. So if you guys would, I think you already have put your contact information in the chat, and I will reach out to you guys independently. But thank you for being here. Hope, did you have anything you wanted to add before we end the meeting?
Wanted to give an update on the just on what we're working with in our checking account. As of today, we have $727.71. That's $477.24 in checking, $250.47 in savings, and we just have the upcoming expense of Weebly for $29.95, and that's on a monthly basis. And just want to piggyback off of what Brandi said about our event that we're just in the planning stages. There have been a lot of reschedules with the events for the fall. Just still recruiting for members of the event committee. So if you're interested, just email me. I'm on the email strand that's listed with everyone. And that's pretty much all I have. Hope everyone has a great weekend.
You too. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. I hope you all have a great day. Cynthia, was there anything that you quickly wanted to add? We still have like 1 minute, but.
No.
Okay. Do check out the website. We do have the COVID-19 resource guide on the website for Norfolk. It's simple, mostly designed for seniors, has a lot of good information on it, as well as our traditional senior resource guide if there's something that you're particularly looking for. Also updated it in a few other ways to include prorated memberships for new members. So if you have never been a member of the Norfolk Task Force and would like to join, starting in June, membership will be $20 for the rest of the year versus the $40. So we encourage all of you that are on the call today to become members if you are not already, so that we can continue to provide resources and education in the community for topics relating to seniors. So thank you all for coming. It was nice to see you. Nice to be around people, more than one or two. So, I hope you all have a great day. I hope you found today's presentation positive and enlightening and thought-provoking. And I know I feel better about the day. So
yeah, thanks, Jeff.
Definitely.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff, very much.
Thank
You guys have a great
Yeah.
day.
Appreciate it.
Thanks,
You
guys.
too. Everybody
Take care,
stay safe.
everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Say bye. Bye.
Bye.
All right. Love you.
I want
Everybody's logging off.
Why are they not?